Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
The debate heats up in Millsboro over an at-large voting system. Republicans retain a seat in the special Delaware legislative election. Masks are back at some of the local hospitals, and we note the passing of former Shorebirds manager Ryan Miner. Then it's that time of the year for another edition of the Delmarva Review. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. First, we turn to Susan Canfora, reporter for Coastal Point. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Don.
So, Susan, I hear it was a wild time at Bits at the town council there in Millsboro over this at-large voting system. What's going on?
Yes, it was quite a night. It was a Tuesday night. It was quite a night at the Millsboro Town Council meeting. Mayor Jim Kells added an agenda item to change the town's traditional voting at-large policy to in-district voting, and that requires a charter change. So Mayor Kells read the proposed wording for that charter change, and one of the council members, Robert Bryan, made a motion to pass it. But not all the council members were in favor. Councilman Marty Presley said it was way too early for wording for any charter change. From there was an extended discussion, but not only among the council members. Millsboro residents in the audience got involved, and they were calling out comments and accusing Mayor Kells of voter repression and being a dictator. It was quite a free-for-all, and that's rarely seen in Millsboro Council. The mayor tried to say, look, I only put this on the agenda because I wanted to vote on this once and for all, and because if we're going to do something, let's do it now. If not, it's going to be over a year before we can. He was referring to the time it could take for the Delaware legislature to approve a charter change. Councilman Kimberly Kahn is also opposed to going to in-district voting. So even though Councilman Robert Bryan made the motion to approve the matter, and even though it was seconded, Presley and Kahn had a lot to say, and the audience were calling out, table it, and this is voter repression. And in the end, the majority vote was to table the matter at least until August. As Councilman Presley suggested, let's be sure the town has all the correct information and hears from the public before rushing ahead to in-district voting. Councilman Presley was very firm when he told the council, we had better do our homework, and that the council has to show due diligence. He said the matter has to be investigated and looked at very carefully. And Kahn, plus some other council members and many of the audience members, agreed. So we'll keep an eye on this and report back as the council sorts this all out and looks at it more seriously in August, Don.
Well, what's the impetus for going to, say, individual districts as opposed to the at-large?
The reason Mayor Kells wants to do this is because there's one district, District 3 in Millsboro, that's much larger than the other districts. And that's because Plantation Lakes, which is a huge housing development there, has so many residents. So he wants to see the districts redrawn, that's another part of this, so that there's more even, it's more evenly distributed, so that the population is more even. And then also along with that, he'd like to see in-district voting so that the people who live in a certain district vote for the person who's representing them. And everybody doesn't just vote for anybody who's running. That's his goal.
Tell me about the audience, because it sounds like it was pretty raucous. And were there any particular area did they seem to come from?
That probably a lot of them were friends of or supporters of Councilwoman Kahn, who's very well spoken and who does her homework and knows exactly what she's talking about. She's been very opposed to strictly in-district voting. She's okay with redrawing the districts and having the districts be more balanced as far as population goes, but she doesn't like the idea of only in-district voting because she wants to be able to vote for anybody who runs because, as she always says, it takes the majority of the council to pass any major decision that affects her life or affects the lives of other Millsboro residents. So she wants to be able to vote for anyone who runs, not just who is representing her district. So that seemed to be, many of the people in the audience seem to be on her side, but I've covered Millsboro for almost 5 years now, and I've never seen such a free-for-all. Usually the mayor or one of the council members will stop it and say, excuse me, to the audience, this is a council decision, please be quiet. But they pretty much let them say what they wanted to say. And one woman actually accused Mayor Kells of trying to be a communist dictator, which of course is ridiculous. And he responded with, oh, come on now, that's not true. The people were really getting angry, and they were calling for it to be tabled. So we saw actions of the residents in Millsboro that I've never seen before. And I certainly hope that doesn't continue. That certainly isn't the way any council should. Every council meeting should be run. But it was very unusual last night when I was there. Mayor Kells did ask them to quiet down once or twice, But the audience just wouldn't do it. They just continued to call out whatever they felt.
Now, by the way, are these all nonpartisan elections, or are they partisan?
Yeah, they're nonpartisan elections in Millsboro.
Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of partisanship, Republicans have retained their seat in a special election after the state representative, Ruth Briggs King, stepped down last year, beat her Democratic opponent, Jane Hovington. What do we know about her so far?
Last November, Ruth Briggs King stepped down last November. I spent a little time talking to the winner of that seat. That's Valerie Jones Giltner. She's a newly elected Delaware representative for District 37. You're right, she is a Republican, as was her predecessor. Ruth Briggs King was also a Republican. That district is in the Georgetown area and also northern Millsboro. She will be sworn in on January 9th, and she'll replace Ruth Briggs King. Ruth Briggs King resigned only because she moved out of District 37. She and her husband moved out of that district, so she was required to resign. Mrs. Giltner told me as she was campaigning, she celebrated her 57th birthday, and she heard quite a bit from prospective constituents who, not surprisingly, complained about all the rapid development in Sussex County. She said she's concerned about being reactionary instead of proactive when it comes to the Delaware Department of Transportation and how they plan, and she would like to see more planning, more serious planning, more proactive planning as this rapid growth continues. Mrs. Giltner ran against her Democratic challenger, Jane Hovington, who was the first African-American chairwoman of Delaware's Democratic Party, and she was also, I believe, the chairwoman of the NAACP for Delaware, at least for Sussex County. It might have been all of Delaware. Mrs. Giltner won by 1,805 votes, and Mrs. Hovington received 1,068 votes. Mrs. Giltner is a retired critical care nurse and a health care consultant, and she's looking forward to being sworn in on January 9th when the annual Delaware legislative session begins in Dover. Her win was a bit of a surprise because she has no political experience. But she said she's well known, and she said maybe it's better that I don't have political experience because people know me. They know me from childhood. They watched me grow up in Georgetown. I was cutting grass and babysitting and walking through the neighborhood as a child, pulling my mower behind me. My parents taught me to work hard, and people know me. She said she is known for being level-headed, and she has set a few goals already, even though she hasn't been sworn in yet. And among those goals are to create a base for stronger families, safe classrooms, and less government intrusion into the family. She said her healthcare background has led her to support local healthcare providers, and she wants to be sure Delaware residents have adequate access to healthcare. She's very interested in government accountability and transparency, and she promised to spend a lot of time meeting with constituents in her district and hosting what she calls coffees, which are little meetings in the mornings, early in the mornings, when residents and constituents can meet with her and have a cup of coffee and discuss what's on their minds. So she's very excited, very happy to have been elected, and very excited to start her term as the new representative.
Now, in terms, by the way, of development, you said her concern is clearly the attitude of the Transportation Department, which has been at least alleged to have been maybe less giving to money to, say, Sussex County in general, as opposed to, say, some of the high-volume, high-populated areas. Is there any sense that you get that she has any concern about the actual development itself, or is it just simply that transportation and the rest of it hasn't sort of caught up with it?
Well, the one thing we talked about is that the reason it's so important for the Department of Transportation to keep up with the rapid development is because without the infrastructure, the huge amounts of traffic can't get from anywhere to anywhere in Sussex County. So, some of the areas should be dualized. There are plans to dualize in some areas, and there are plans to add, the new bypass in Millsboro. So there are some things that are planned, but they take years and years, and the development is happening now. So she'd like to see DelDOT do more to improve the infrastructure of the roads infrastructure, so they can keep up with the traffic. That's one of the major concerns. I've had people tell me who live in Ocean View, or maybe a mile away from Bethany Beach, it might take them an hour to get from Ocean View to Bethany Beach in the summer because the traffic is just so heavy. So that was her concern with DelDOT. But it's all of the infrastructure. It's water and sewer and wastewater and schools and everything that it takes for a community to run. With so much growth happening so fast, certainly have her hands full as she works on that infrastructure and keeping up with that development.
Because it does seem as if Is she concerned about the actual development itself, or is it just simply accommodating the development? Because there's a lot of push, yeah?
She's concerned about both, and her concern, of course, is because of what the constituents have told her. Constituents have said, this has to stop. And, she was joking with me. She said, I said to them, how long have you lived here? This has been going on for quite a while. But the development is rapid, and it's continuing as the days go by. I've had Sussex County council members tell me that they can't stop it. If constituents tell them the same thing, we have to stop this growth. And they'll say, you can't just tell people who own land you can't develop it. If they own land, they have a right to develop it. And if they develop it, of course, that puts a strain on the water and sewer and on the roads. So it's an all-encompassing problem. And all of these elected officials have to work together to try to make it as easy as possible to get around and, to live a comfortable life in Sussex County as it continues to grow.
Also, we had the passing of Ryan Miner. He was a former manager for the Shorebirds, also best known, I guess, for going to the Baltimore Orioles.
Yes, Don. Sadly, right before Christmas, Ryan Miner, a former Delaware Shorebirds manager and a player, died from stage 4 colon cancer. He was only 49 years old and the father of 2 little girls, and he's being remembered as the baseball player who replaced Baltimore Orioles player Cal Ripken Jr. After Ryan Miner's death, Cal Ripken tweeted, Ryan and I shared a wonderful moment, and I'll always remember him as a friend and a terrific teammate. He made a positive impact on everyone who knew him. His family is in my thoughts at this very difficult time. And that moment Cal Ripken referred to was when Ryan thanked Cal Ripken for the opportunity to replace him after Cal Ripken retired. And Cal Ripken told him, go get him. Miner died on Friday, December 22nd. I talked to Chris Bitters, who's the Shorebirds general manager, and he knew Ryan Miner very well. He said he had a great personal interaction with fans. He said he always wanted to make sure everybody was having a good time when they went to the ballpark. Chris said there were always a lot of autograph requests for Ryan, and he never turned fans down. He was happy to stop and talk to them and give them an autograph, and he signed those autographs gladly. Chris Bitters said when he first got to know Ryan Miner and his wife Allison, only one of his daughters had been born, and that's Reagan, and later his younger daughter, Finley, was born. And Ryan's focus was very strictly on his family. He told me Ryan was a coach and a player and a manager and a member of our community, and he made Salisbury his home after he met Allison. Ryan Miner played for the Shorebirds in 1997, and he had 24 home runs. He then managed the Shorebirds from 2010 until 2012, and again from 2014 until 2017. He was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles in the 1996 draft out of the University of Oklahoma, and he also played basketball for the Oklahoma Sooners. So the community was very sad to hear of his death. It's a sad time. His brother, his twin brother, I think his name is Damon, reported on Facebook, had updates on Facebook about how his brother was doing, and he said he was the best twin brother he could ever have, and it's a very sad time for the family.
Now, I also understand, Susan, that masks are back, at least at some of the local hospitals. What's changed in policy? What's the impetus for this?
Yeah, we've been hearing news reports. There's a lot of respiratory illnesses right now, COVID and colds and other illnesses. And in fact, a miserable virus hit my family this week right after Christmas, too. And I have a lot of friends who have caught COVID or have COVID again. So it's out there. And to update our listeners, we talked to Tidal Health and to BB Healthcare in Lewis. Tidal Health in Salisbury is announcing on its website that masks are required for visitors in patients' rooms. Visitors might also be asked to put on a mask if they go with a patient to the outpatient area, if the patient has outpatient services. And, of course, anyone who has a cold or any other symptoms of an illness should stay away from the hospital and not visit. As the flu and RSV season started on November 20th last year, Tidal Health posted at that time on its website that sibling visitation was going to be suspended in the special care nursery where newborns are. They said they'll revisit that policy in the spring, but right now siblings cannot go into the hospital to visit their newborn little baby brothers or sisters. And at BB Healthcare in Lewis, a mask mandate has not been put into place for visitors who are well, although masks are certainly encouraged for those who are not feeling well, and of course if they're not feeling well, they shouldn't be there to begin with. BB team members, doctors and nurses and techs are wearing masks when they're in the patient care areas during this part of the respiratory illness season as the flu, RSV, COVID, and other viruses, as there are more of them. And that's what Ryan Marshall told me. Brian Marshall handles public relations, and public information for BB. He also told me that Dr. David Tam wanted to offer a comment for us, and Dr. Tam said that any decision to return to masking will be made with great deliberation because of the emotional and psychological impacts on our community and team members. Dr. Tam said the safety of patients and caregivers will continue to be the highest priority as they decide whether or not to require masks again. But I'm seeing more and more people in the grocery store and places where I go wearing masks. There were quite a few at the Millsboro council meeting when I covered it this week wearing masks. So I think people are being proactive. And as these respiratory illnesses continue to be more prevalent, they're taking it upon themselves to wear masks. So I'd say it's not a bad idea.
I want to turn finally to a couple of things. One is I want to turn to the penguin swim. I understand that they were out there in the cold. Not something I would necessarily do. I don't know about you. I don't know whether you've done this or not. How was it this year?
I've covered it many times. I haven't done it. One time years ago when I first moved to the shore, I did put my foot in the ocean water on Thanksgiving Day, and my poor little foot shriveled up because the water was so cold. So I never tried that again. But on New Year's Day every year, and on New Year's Day this year, hundreds of people dove in or ran in or just walked into the chilly Atlantic Ocean water at 91st Street in Ocean City for the annual penguin swim. The last estimate I heard was that more than 900 people were there on New Year's Day. Maybe you might want to call them brave, but whatever the reason was, they certainly did it for a good cause. They raised $109,000 this year for Atlantic General Hospital in Berlin. The penguin swim is a tradition that started about 30 years ago. The weather wasn't too bad this year. It was chilly. It was sunny. It was sunny New Year's morning, but it was chilly, and the water, of course, is cold. But everybody had a good time. Some of them over the years have dressed in really silly costumes or tuxedo shirts or, top hats. One time I remember there was one former county councilman for Worcester County who wore like a top hat with of course, fake scrambled eggs on top of the top hat. Just silly things. They wear their bathing suits as though it's a summer day. But they do it all to help AGH. And, of course, that hospital is crucial in Worcester County where I live, and locals certainly depend on it. So regardless of their reasons, they did a good thing to raise money for that hospital, Don. It was a lot of fun.
And finally, we have a couple of newborns, first of the year.
Two little newborns, Tidal Health Hospital in Salisbury has announced the birth of the first babies of 2024 at both our hospitals in Seaford and Salisbury. In Salisbury, tiny Nailani Amira Moses was born at 12:55 a.m. on New Year's Day. She weighed 5 pounds, 15 ounces, and she's the daughter of Daylin Johnson of Salisbury. In Seaford, at the Tidal Health Hospital in Seaford, little baby boy Kennedy Ishmael Ramirez Lopez of Millsboro was born on New Year's Day. He was the first baby of 2024 in that area. He's the son of Livy Lopez Yock and Rutilio Ramirez. He has a big sister, Irene Esther Ramirez Lopez. And little Kennedy was born at 5:25 p.m. on New Year's Day, weighing 5 pounds, 17 ounces, and being 18 inches long. And, of course, these babies were the best gifts for their families as the New Year started, but there were more gifts as well. Tidal Health Junior Auxiliary Board donated presents to the babies and their families. The Junior Board over the years has donated almost $10 million in gifts since 1924. And these gifts aren't just for new babies. They've also helped with hospital expansion, medical equipment, supplies, and services. But, of course, the focus at New Year's is always about the new baby of the year. And this year, we're happy to have two.
We've been speaking with Susan Canfora, reporter for Coastal Point. Appreciate you taking the time to talk with us this afternoon.
My pleasure.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.